So welcome to this week's Optimum Health Clinic Facebook Live. And this week, I should turn off my text messages. This week, I want to talk about the role of community and the, in many ways, critical role that having support from friends and comrades, I'd say, on the path to recovery, how important that can be. And this is something that over the years at the Optimum Health Clinic, we've tried a number of different ways to try and support people with. One way is the Optimum Health Community's website, which we've had over 1,500 people that have joined as a way of connecting and supporting each other. And I've been thinking about this quite a bit recently, and we've actually just literally this afternoon set up a Facebook group for people that are either patients of or connected to the Optimum Health Clinic. And I'll post a link to that after this video. But it got me thinking a little bit about the role of community and just why it can be so important. And I think it's true to say that in any kind of chronic illness or any difficult life experience that we're going through, connections and support and being somewhat cheered on and cared for by people that understand what we're going through is just critically important. It's why in things like the 12-step programs, that sense of being in a community is so critical and so important. And I think in something like ME, chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia, because the illness is often so isolating, it has an additional impact on why community is so necessary. And also when you have something which is more difficult for people to understand, the actual experience that we're going through. I talked a bit about this when I did a session about a month ago about helping friends and family to understand. And I talked about the fact that it's not an illness where you can look at someone and you can immediately see and understand what's wrong with them. You know, if someone has a broken leg or a significant physical injury, we can see that and we can understand that. And the lack of clear, visible, just recognition, understanding, and the lack of a biomarker and all the things that culturally make ME, chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia difficult illnesses, make it again all the more important to have people around us that can understand and can share the experience that we're having. And I'll certainly say in the years that I was ill, I felt incredibly isolated for, at times, many, many months, and I guess probably several years at one point. And it wasn't before the internet, but it was certainly before mass adoption of the internet. And so it was, for me, trying to find connection through reading books of people that have been on difficult life journeys and feeling a connection with them through that. It was through, over time, joining some meditation and yoga groups, even though I couldn't always fully participate in the groups. But having connection with people that had some appetite and interest for the idea of inner change and self-development. But in many ways, I can see how much easier that would have been with things like the internet. And of course, there are, maybe we'll come to in a minute, some of the downsides of community on the internet. But saying one of the plus sides is it's much easier to find people, because we can reach people all over the world, that are sharing some of the perhaps more unusual life experiences that we are having. I think it's also important to say, and this is something that I could have touched on perhaps in that video about a month ago around dealing with friends and family, that we often, before we get sick, we've got friends, we've got connection with other people. And then when we become sick, being on the path of healing and recovery often necessitates that we make significant changes in our relationship to ourselves, but also our relationships to other people and our relationships to the world. And as a result of those changes, it's like the people that we were friends with before we got sick were or are people that share the worldview that we used to hold. And it's not to say that that worldview is wrong. It's not to say that those friends can't still be a wonderful support and be a great part of our life going forwards. But if we were someone that valued ourselves by what we did and what we achieved in the world, oops, that was my phone crashing down. Maybe I'll try and hold it rather than it's going flying around. So, and hopefully that wasn't a massive crash that deafened everyone's ears. So if the people around us are people that remind us of the worldview that we used to have. As we're going on that path of change and transformation, it's very difficult for them to understand, but also to support those changes. Because in many ways, they want us to be the person that we were before, because that's the person that they know and they like and they understand. And as we start to change, in some ways, that can be somewhat threatening and somewhat challenging for them. You know, an analogy that someone once used, I think is very helpful. It's almost like if we're dancing a particular dance, let's say we're dancing the dance of, the tango. And then we're in that dance with them and we try and change the dance. We try and do the foxtrot or whatever. I have no idea what these dances are actually like. But anyway, you get the point. They have one of three choices. They're either going to come and dance the new dance with us. They're going to try and pull us back into the old dance, or we're going to dance different dances. And what this means in terms of friendships is often it's difficult for people to join us in the new dance because they haven't got the pressures of change, of illness and kind of life crisis to drive the transformation. And then maybe their life is working and happy the way that it is. So a lot of what can happen is we end up doing a lot of the dancing on our own for a period of time. And to use another analogy, what that can be like is like we've had a room that was full of lots of nice things and furniture and activities, and gradually that room's getting emptied. It's like those friendships are going and they're not being replaced by anything. And suddenly we feel like we're in this kind of big, empty, dark room by ourselves. And it's lonely and it can be difficult, it can be isolating. And what I found a very helpful way to think about that is it's making space for something new to come into our life. It's difficult to find new friendships and new connections if we're filled up with the ones that we already have. And if we want to have people in our life which can support a path of inner transformation, can share those interests and share those appetites, then we have to make space for them. And so if life feels somewhat empty and we feel somewhat isolated and somewhat on our own, to understand that that doesn't have to be a destination, that can be a transition. And in that transition, what we're doing is we're making space for new things to come in. And then that raises some really interesting questions. It raises questions around what kind of connections do we want? What kind of person do we want to be in those new kinds of connections? And I think for a lot of us, one of the things that becomes really important is finding a way to be more authentic, finding a way to be a more truthful expression of ourselves. And yes, of course, that can be embracing our capacities and talents, but also embracing our fragility and our struggle and our difficulties, the kind of things that often we don't talk about in society. Often it's about presenting an image of wanting to be seen a certain way. And so paying attention to the kind of friendships and connections that we were like, and consciously choosing the kind of person we would want to be in those connections. It might also have been historically that we were always used to being the helper and the supporter. So we were always used to making everyone else's needs more important than our own. And so one of the things that we might decide is, of course, we still want to care for and be empathic and sympathetic towards others, but we also want to express what our needs are. And that becomes an active process. And so one of the things that we've certainly found over the years is at things like the 90-day program and our practitioner training program, they've been an amazing place for people to meet like-minded people. In fact, when we started doing things in a group format, initially it was a sense of this would be a more cost-effective way for more people to go deeper into the material, and hopefully being in a group won't inhibit that. And then the experience was actually the opposite, that being in a group significantly enhanced that process. And so, of course, I highly encourage anyone that's in a position to be able to do something like that or has been part of one of those groups to cultivate those connections. And obviously, another way to do that is things like Facebook groups. And I'll make a few comments around it, but as I mentioned at the start, and I will share the link when I finished doing the broadcast, that I've just this afternoon, it currently has me and one other person as people in that group. And I should say that I'm not going to use that as a place to connect. If people want to connect with me, it's better to do it through established means like writing via the clinic, or I have a professional Facebook page that I respond to comments on there. So but I had to use my personal account to set up the page or set up the group. But it can be a really helpful way, these kind of groups, of meeting other people. And equally, one of the things that can obviously be very interesting in terms of Facebook groups is there can be all kinds of other things that happen in Facebook groups. One of the things that's really interesting is how people can connect through their shared suffering and shared complaining. And I'm not saying that's wrong. Actually, I think for a lot of people, learning to express what's difficult and what's painful is actually really helpful and really important. And I think when that's being done in an authentic, honest way, that has real value. But when it's a kind of merging through just trashing and tearing apart other people or other organizations, then it's a technical term for it. It's called negative merging. It's through merging with others through a kind of negative attitude. That can be less helpful. And I think what can often happen in Facebook groups is that people can kind of connect through their shared kind of frustration and difficulty, and that's all that happens. And there's a kind of shared, like, our worldview is right and everyone else's is wrong. And that's not, I don't think that's so helpful. I mean, certainly my fear when I was ill was I didn't want to join an ME support group because I didn't want to join a group where the support was in living with an illness. I wanted to join an ME recovery group, and those groups didn't exist, sadly, at that point. I actually think over the years since then, I think some of the ME support groups have really become awesome. They've really progressed. But, we're talking 20 years ago now, and it was obviously a different story in those days. But yeah, I just thought it'd be an interesting thing. Optimal Health Community, the website we had, did really well about 6 years ago. It was actually a pretty hot thing. I think these days it's been significantly replaced by Facebook groups, and there's not as much activity that happens in there. So I thought it'd be interesting to see if we could build something. And just see if you guys can be a support for each other, sharing the values and the principles of Optimal Health Clinic, i.e. it being authentic and caring and supportive. I don't see it as being a place of people offering unsolicited advice. So it's not a place to try and fix each other. It's not a place to overly promote particular perspectives. I think it's important to remember that what works for one person is not what works for another person. And it's very easy, if we have something that makes a big impact on our recovery, to become evangelical that everyone should be doing that. And as much as it may help for some people, it's not true it's necessarily going to be the thing that helps everyone else. So I'd like to try and see it not to be a place to force opinions, not to be a place to trash, even if there are certainly some medical experts in the ME chronic fatigue world that are causing a lot of problems and not helpful. And I think it's fine to share opinions, but I don't want it to become a place where there's just an endless kind of trashing of those people, because that isn't constructive either in terms of being helpful. But I love the idea of people just being able to share experiences and connect to each other. And if someone's having a difficult day, to perhaps share about that and people support them. Someone has a breakthrough, to be able to get support around that and just to share that. Sometimes some of the most significant experiences that we have, like the big breakthroughs, are something so simple that someone that's not experienced ME, chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia just wouldn't really get it. Like almost, it could be as simple as we've constantly resisted listening to our body, and we managed to get to the edge, or we might have been about to be able to crash. We managed to stop and to rest, and like most people would be like, yeah, whatever, you went and laid down and had a rest. But someone that really gets it would understand what a significant moment that is. I think it's great to be able to share that and just share positive experiences, things that have helped. And it's completely fine to talk constructively about experiences at OHC. We're not going to moderate this if you're having a difficult time with some of the techniques. I think it's fine to share about that. I just want it to as much as people to think about how they're sharing their experience of support, just what they're putting into the group field. That's always the thing. It's like, is what you're sharing enhancing other people's experience or not? And sometimes you might just need some support, and that's totally fine, totally the place. But if it's an endless thing where it's pulling down the group energy, that's not what we want to co-create. So it's always thinking, how can we make this more helpful for others? And, things like sharing quotes, sharing things that have helped, sharing books, sharing movies, all of that stuff I think would be awesome. I think there's a huge amount of knowledge and potential in this community. And this just feels like another way to try and give people a chance to connect with other people. No doubt we'll need some moderators. So if you're interested, I've somewhat done this in typical Optimal Health Clinic style, started something without, initially without a great plan to see if it gets some traction, then we'll put some structure and plan around it. So if it takes off, we'll need some moderators. If you're interested in doing that, then great, reach out and someone will be in touch about that. Just looking at my notes, the other thing I think I want to say, I think I've already said it, is just, whether it's in our group or in any other group or any other interaction, something that's hugely helped me over the years, and it's one of the biggest things that I've taken from the kind of self-development and psychology work that I've done, is trying to respect and understand different world views. I think it's also one of the things that people have come over the years to really appreciate about I hope it's one of the things people have come to appreciate about the Optimal Health Clinic, that we've very deliberately avoided jumping on any bandwagons. We've always tried to maintain respect for different perspectives and different ways of people doing things. And, things that have really helped me with that are models like the Enneagram and spiral dynamics, things that I get into in some of the conscious transformation program that I teach from time to time. But the more that we can understand why people see the world that they do, and just because they see it different to us, doesn't make us right and them wrong, or them right and us wrong. It's a different perspective, and it's helpful to be understanding of that, not necessarily to agree with it, but to try and understand it. And the more we can meet people in the world from that attitude, I just think that everyone benefits from that. It's like we don't have to agree with someone's worldview, but we can certainly respect and appreciate them as a person. And ironically, the more we meet someone whose worldview we don't agree with respect and kindness, the more likely we are to cultivate change in people's worldviews. People don't change by us ramming our opinions down their throats. And equally, there's something we'll talk, I'm sure, more about in future Facebook Lives, that there's a great deal to be done in changing attitudes towards ME, chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia. And I think a fascinating kind of conversation is, how do we change cultural perspectives in a way which is constructive? And I think there's a lot to be done around that. Anyway, that's a slightly different topic. So if anyone's got any questions, I'll feel free to just post them now, and if they come on the next kind of 30 seconds or so, then I can start responding to them. I will also jump on the video, jump on the comments later on this evening. So as I have been doing on the previous ones, I really appreciate people engaging and asking questions. It's actually been really fun. Fun's one word for it. It's been really rewarding, or a better word for it, for me, doing these Facebook Lives for a couple of months, because I do very little client work these days with Optimal Health Clinic. I spend the time that I spend with Optimal Health Clinic, I primarily spend leading the organisation and supporting the leadership team. So it's actually been really nice to have a way to have some contact with you guys and just hear some of your experiences. So yeah, any questions? Last opportunity to have them in the video now. Also, feel free to post. Hi Gail, and also hello to people that have said hello before. There's Joan and Liz and Gemma and Lisa and Annie. So thank you guys for. Sorry, I was a bit distracted. Just doing my talk. But yeah, if you've got topics that you would like to see covered in these Facebook Lives, then please do also post them underneath the video, and I would. It really helps me just kind of come up with possible topics and ideas and that kind of thing. So there's a few questions that have come in. So Sharon says, I've been really bad the last 2 weeks, feel so sick. I'm sorry to hear that, Sharon. If you're not already doing anything with Optimal Health Clinic, please do give us a chance to at least give a perspective. So an information pack and 15-minute chat is always the best way to do that. Amanda, how do you join your group? I haven't been on the courses, etc. So I will post a link, Amanda, at the end of the video. I probably should have posted it at the start. But I will post details of the group that's just been started. Hi Jane and Tom. I'd like to know more about your story. How long after becoming ill did you feel like the first stages of recovery? Tom, the best place to see my story in a free format is on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/freedomfromme. 4 or 5 months ago, I recorded, I think, about a 20-minute version of some of the details of my recovery story. So that's free to watch on there. Another way would also be my book, which goes into a lot more detail. It's, I think, almost out of print in the UK, and we're just figuring out the plans for reprinting and what's happening around that. It's probably going to take a while to figure out, but I'm pretty sure the ebook is. I'm sure the ebook's still available. So that's another way to get that. Sharon, should I be feeling nauseous all the time? No. So at stages of crash, that could maybe a symptom, but when there are these kind of symptoms, there should be an explanation of why that's happening, and that's definitely something to give us a chance to investigate if that's possible, or investigate in other ways. So look, thank you everyone. I will post a link to the group in a second. Please do join, chat, connect, share with each other. Liz is saying she got my book on Amazon a few weeks back. Great, so there's still some copies there. That's fantastic. Is it on audiobooks? It's not. There is tons and tons and tons of audio of tons of video that's free on YouTube. Secretsrecovery.com is a fantastic place to go to for over 100 hours of audio content with me and many other people as well. That's something that we're currently looking at in terms of significant upgrades and improvements around. So more on that in the next couple of months, I would guess. All right, look, thank you everyone. I will come back on the comments later on this evening, and I'll post the group video, post the link to the group now, and let us know. Let me know topics for future sessions. Also, I know some of the rest of the practitioner team are going to come on these videos in the future. Gemma did one a few weeks ago, but some of the rest of the team are going to come on as well, which will be great because it will give you guys some variety. There's also some different perspectives from this end as well. Thank you for watching, everyone. Good night.